Hello, everyone. Let's start this. We have limited time. This usually is a lecture of like 2 or 3 hours, but I have tried to compress it. So this will be a very general introduction to digital generations, to just let you know what these digital generations are and what are the characteristics of it. So what are the digital generations that we will be discussing today? There are 6 generations that are currently coexisting in society, but they are vastly different, especially when it comes to the digital realm. And let's take a short look at the characteristics of each of these generations, as well as how they interact with the digital world, with how they consume digital resources, what we should consider when we are service providers, when we create digital tools for these generations. Before I go any further, I would like to say 2 very important things. First of all, these time periods that are displayed here are approximate. Sociology is not an exact science, so if you look somewhere else for materials, for information, these years can differ a bit. This is one way how to split it. And the second thing is that I will talk about the characteristics of these generations, but it does not by any mean that each representative of this generation fits this description perfectly. It doesn't mean that if you're a representative of this generation, you will fit this. It's just general characteristics that research shows, general characteristics of this age group. So please take no offense, and please do not say, I do not do this like this. It's just, yeah. So, also these 6 generations that coexist now in society, to some extent, lesser or greater extent, inhabit also the digital world. But when it comes to this topic, diversity also exists worldwide. There are first world countries, there are developing countries, of course they can be different. There are urban and rural areas that also can be a bit different. There are specific target audiences, and of course there also exists differences between younger and older representatives of each of this generation. And rapid changes influenced by one generation can influence another generation. There are significant shifts due to COVID-19. And while some characteristics remain unchanged, the situation regarding the digital environment can change any time. And for example, data from 2018 has already become imprecise and may only now indicate a trend. Nevertheless, I think it's important to recognize general divide and that these generations are there and differ. So each generation is different, and the essence of the shift, what makes them different, lies in the relationship between the individual and the society. How we as individuals interact with the society as an entity. The next generation establishes that relationship differently from the previous one. So me, as a millennial, as an individual, I perceive my relationship with the society differently than, for example, my grandparents do. Usually it is large events that influence this relationship. For example, world wars, 9/11, the rise of the internet, rise of touchscreens. These are the things that shape how we behave as generations and as digital generations. Differences in forming social habits and utilizing technology create a gap between generations. So there is a gap, and we do not know why, and that is why we need to research the phenomena so that we can narrow the gap, we can understand each other better, and we can function better as a society and as a community. Previously, this gap wasn't that present. It wasn't so perceivable. For example, one family, a family consisting of many members of various generations that was inhabiting one space, living in one house, they shared one culture. And now different members of the same family, they can share very different cultures. For example, the room of a teenager these days is very, very different than a room of an of a senior, of a grandparent. A grandparent may still use a flashlight, an alarm clock, a radio, and a phone, like maybe even a smartphone, but the phone is mainly used for calling. And at the same house, a teenager may have one device and just exhibit all different symbols on their walls. They may use different devices, and it's an entirely different culture. A very general way how to categorize these generations are in two major groups: digital immigrants and digital natives. Digital immigrants were not born and raised in the digital world. They have acquired technology as their second culture, alongside the traditional one, the analog one. And this comes with an increased digital skepticism. And these generations may prefer traditional solutions, and sometimes they don't fully understand how digital technology fully works, and they're not fully aware of the associated risks. Digital citizens or digital natives, however you wish to call them, have grown up in the digital world. They often think digitally, and they are utilizing technology to its full potential. They intuitively grasp technology and are accustomed to its development, and are even expecting it. A comparison can be made between borrowing sugar from a neighbor. So maybe someone from a baby boomer generation is running out of sugar, so their first thought is, I can just go to a neighbor and borrow it. And for example, Gen Z representative is running out of sugar, they will just order it online on an app. They don't even think about these traditional solutions, which might be even simpler. Previously, during these lectures, I have been told that I am not particularly good at choosing pictures that represent these generations. So if you don't find that they are fitting, I'm sorry, I did my best. So now I will go through all of these 6 generations and very, very briefly sort of give key points on how these generations interact with the digital world, and maybe just a short introduction in what forms their habits in general. So the first generation is silent traditionalists. They are born approximately between 1925 and 1945. They are considered to be the oldest generation of the digital world. They grew up at a time when music, radios, and telephones were the top technological advancements. Nowadays, this generation primarily uses technology for one purpose, to communicate with their families. They mostly do not use social media, but they rely on email as the main form of digital communication. Although I have to mention that this has changed significantly due to COVID-19, and the members of this, representatives of this generation, realized that they can utilize video calls to see their family. They struggle with internet security, such as fraudulent emails. They don't fully understand what is possible digitally, and find it challenging to grasp the logic of the digital environment, because they try to find comparisons with the traditional culture. This generation generally only consumes digital solutions if these solutions significantly simplify important processes for them. They only learn technologies that they will use all the time, extensively. For example, some kind of medical solutions, communication tools that can link them with their family members that live far away. Yes, but usually they're not the generation that will seek digital tools and will ask for them. The next digital generation is baby boomers. The name comes from the boom of babies that was that came into this world after World War II. They grew up during a time when everything was geared towards societal needs, with everything being built and renovated after the World War II. They were raised by morally scarred individuals after the war, who experienced the war, who came back from fighting in the war. And this generation were the pioneers, becoming hippies and generating radical ideas, and they're actually relatively open to change, even in their older days. So yes, this is the generation that is marked as the first rebels. They were the first users of computers. There are notable statistical differences when it comes to older and younger representatives of baby boomers. This generation generally feels somewhat comfortable using computers and the internet. Some data shows that it's around 60%, some data shows that it's more. They have also adopted smartphones, and I find this is a graph from 2021. It's United Kingdom, and I want you to pay attention not to the numbers themselves, but the increase of numbers and how quickly this generation is catching up with using technological solutions. So if in 2012 people 16 to 24, around 86% of these people were using smartphones, and only 3% of generation age 65 plus was using smartphones, then in 2020 the increase in the younger generations is just like 12%, yet in the older generations it's 62%. So we cannot really talk about generations based in data from 2012 or 15, because it's so rapidly changing. And for example, as I was mentioning, COVID-19 changing how we interact with technology, data from United States shows that this generation increased their online grocery shopping by 400% due to the impact of COVID-19. And the pandemic significantly influenced their other habits and changed their attitudes to the digital environment in general. A small survey in Latvia, for example, showed that 86% of seniors claimed that the technological knowledge they gained during the pandemic will be utilized in the future as well. It's not something they will drop, it's something that they will continue to use. practically speaking, this won't be the generation that embraces technological solutions if traditional solutions are working and if they're available. They still will generally prefer a printed booklet, a printed material over a digital guide. They might not be keen on learning new mobile apps, scanning smart objects, and so on. They also, the same as the previous generation, will most likely primarily learn technologies that they will use frequently. The next generation is Generation X. The name comes from not really knowing what will be the main characteristic of this generation, so it's the X, the unknown. This is the least researched generation, although funnily enough they were the ones who gave rise to generational studies. They were the ones who said we need to research generations and we need to really work on this. This generation is referred to as the last one of the old civilization, of the traditional media, and the first one of the new world, of the internet world, of the digital world. They grew up in relatively stable economic and political conditions. And something that is really important to understand them, that they were raised on discipline as the key thing in education and in raising children. So parents focused on themselves, on their adult needs, and children, children just needed to abide to the rhythm and the rules of the adults. Everything was done systematically, both within the family. If we read books from Benjamin Spock, How to Raise Children, it really concentrates on system, on timing, on schedule. So the needs of the child were not that central. And therefore they appreciate systems, order, stability. This is the generation that really values these things. They have often enough become victims of change. So they're not really keen on change, especially quick change. They lead more restrained lives comparing to their rebel parents, baby boomers. And what is really important and why generational research became so topical for them is that they don't really understand the next generations. In communication with other generations, the younger ones, they often feel offended because parents don't understand their children and their grandchildren's social habits. It's quite mysterious to them. And there's a significant gap between specifically Generation X and their children. This is the biggest gap in generational research that has been there. They expect that younger generations will act similarly, how they were taught, being disciplined, respectful to their parents, respectful to older generations, and thoughtful towards other. However, millennials are not that way, oftentimes. Unfortunately, this generation is often pretty much ignored in the media, in advertisement, in movies. Now it's maybe changing a bit. They appear, rarely in advertisements, statistically, in comparison to younger generations. So it makes it difficult to younger generations to understand them and emulate them, understand their social behavior models. And oftentimes their characteristics are unfairly highlighted to emphasize advantages of other generations. They are digital immigrants still, utilizing technology while also enjoying print culture as their native culture. They did not learn the digital language in childhood, so it results that they speak the digital language with a bit of an accent. However, many studies describe this generation as active, happy, and achieving work-life balance. Currently, they are, research shows, re-evaluating themselves and seeking new directions, such as exploring new hobbies and professions. And here we also need to talk about how one generation influences the other one. It's not really set in stone, it's very changing all the time. And the influence of their children's generation, of millennial generation, is quite significant. Millennials were the first generation who sort of postpone when they start to be real adults, if we can use that term, and they create families later in life. They do all the typical adult things much later in life, so they also have children later in life. The period of youth is no longer biologically determined, the period of childhood is no longer biologically determined, and the period of older age, of retirement, is no longer biologically determined. Consequently, at an age when older representatives of this generation are nearing what used to be senior years, long time ago, members of this generation are still very vital and active members of society, and they are postponing what is said to be retirement age or older age. They're saying, no, we're still very active and vital young adults. Approximately 3/4, so about 75% of this generation members in the developed world actively use social media. They imitate millennials when migrating through social media platforms. And it's important here again to look not only at the quantity of percentage of use, but also of growth, how much the increase there is in them using social media, which is often faster than in other generations, and it indicates narrowing of the gap. Representatives of this generation already possess a variety of devices, technological devices they use in their daily lives, such as music devices, e-readers. Compared to next generations, they are more open to separate devices than seeking integration. And they also have lower demands in the digital environment. They're not that picky, prioritizing functionality over design. They're more patient, they're more understanding towards like imperfect technological solutions. Regarding services, they are willing to explore, for example, cultural institutions' offerings in the digital environment, but more clear instructions and guidance are necessary. Ideally, someone explaining or demonstrating it would be appreciated, like an intro video. They value personal contact. They have experienced various traditional solutions, and they greatly appreciate the conveniences offered by the digital environment. They also do not take technology for granted. The next generation is millennials, or Generation Y. Millennials because They were born starting in 1980, so they would enter the workforce at the millennia. Generation Y as the next letter in the alphabet after Generation X. They are the most extensively studied generation because their social norms, emotional attitudes, and goals differ very, very significantly from the previous generations. And these characteristics are seen across cultures worldwide. So if we talk about generational research, when we were talking about silent traditionalists, baby boomers, Gen X, these research were mostly in the Western world, in the developed world, but now when we talk about millennials, and especially generations after that, Gen Z, Generation Alpha, this is already worldwide. The internet has connected this generation, and they're quite similar all across the world. Their trends are quite similar. They're confident, self-aware, optimistic. They believe that they will achieve their dreams. They are often referred to as the tolerance and narcissism generation, with narcissism levels measured 3 times higher than those of baby boomer generation. The selfie culture, which I also showed here, symbolizes their generation, marking a significant paradigm shift. They were the first generation to say, whatever is in front of me is not as important as is here. This needs to be pictured, not the scene. So selfie is a symbol of this generation. They generally consider education as a determining factor in one's future and are more likely to pursue lifelong learning, which is something that previous generations are also now doing. They emphasize the practical aspects of education, and the education needs to be made in such a way so that it's applicable in real life solutions, not just theoretical. Millennials are generally reluctant to take on burdensome social and financial commitments, and often to continue to live with their parents longer, to maintain a lifestyle they're accustomed to. And stability, which was something that is very important for Generation X, is not necessarily that important to them. They feel a lot more comfortable changing jobs, living arrangements, countries, etc. They are characterized by the so-called Peter Pan syndrome, prolonging their youth approximately by 10 years. Family is important to them, yet they also prioritize building career and enjoying their youth. They are named the most careful parents in history, raising the most helpless generation. So in comparison to what a 10-year-old could do 100 years ago, a 10-year-old today is way less independent and way less capable of taking care of themselves. And this, I was talking about the shift in how the individual creates a relationship with the society, and this is where millennials tend to prioritize individuality over socialization, and they struggle with constructing their social identities. This is the generation where living through social media is a norm, which is not something for even if previous generations use social media, it's not such a significant part of their identity. They are the first generation to consciously shape their online image, to consciously think about how will I be perceived on social media and what will that tell to everyone about me. And of course, social media platforms cater to this desire, as you can see with new tools and new features developing. Discussions about identity crisis, fake online lives, prioritizing real life over the internet persona, and the impact of social media on mental health are very prevalent in this generation. It's really becoming a hot topic and something that we are discussing more and more. They consider various technological solutions to be essential, something we cannot live without, as they also are the generation immersed in startup culture. They embrace the culture of social media, which enhances their collaborational skills and emphasizes teamwork, but they love teamwork, but they also need their individual achievements to be recognized. They are the generation of mobile applications, technological solutions. They have very high expectations for technology. They desire excellence in all areas and expect very intuitive usability. They're not nearly as forgiving to technological flaws as their parents' generation. They get quite annoyed when something is not working and something is not intuitive. They are the smart everything generation, interested in smart devices, smart homes, smart cars, and they're very, very eager to explore the world of technology, although something named digital fatigue is also quite prevalent in discussions today. And now they keep introducing new various disciplines into the digital realm, for example, wellness, mental health, etc. Generation Z, post-millennials, or Zoomers, is characterized by the formation of a child-centered society and the equality of children's rights with those of adults. As I was mentioning, when Gen X was being raised, child was a child, an adult was an adult. Child's needs were decided by adults, and this is the generation where a child and an adult are perceived as equals. I will not comment on whether that is good or bad, but that is what research shows. This generation is self-aware, very self-aware, and exhibits a strong sense of self at a very early age. They have a very limited concept of the world without smartphones. It's very hard for them to imagine how people lived without smartphones, and they have very high expectations for technical and digital solutions. Interestingly, this self-agency also comes into the digital world. For example, around 83–85% of young people themselves decide what type of devices they need, what will they use. It's not their parents, it's them themselves who research, who look for what technological solutions they want to explore. Their must-have accessory is headphones, and this is why the boom of headphones and even more and more expensive headphones are coming into the market. Yes, as I said, every large events shape how the next generation will be raised. After the Second World War, children were raised based on very strict rules because adults needed to work on something else. This generation, the way they were raised is very much influenced by 9/11, because this was an event that sort of terrified parents, and they thought, we do not live in a safe world at all. And it started in America, where it was just this overprotectiveness of children that spread all around the world, which sometimes leads to a generation's sense of helplessness. They exhibit learned helplessness, a diminished sense of agency. They want to, because parents want to protect them, do everything for them, so they don't really learn themselves, and they don't really experience the world themselves. There's a phenomenal research in the United States, I think it's in 70s and in 2000s, after the 9/11, where it was research in the same city, how far from the house parents let their children to go unattended. And in the 70s, it was a few kilometers. So the parents sort of established large geographical barriers, like a lake or a bridge. You can go towards until the bridge or until that house. And in the 2000s, it was just in their backyard. So the children do not get to experience the world themselves that much. Technology is seen as one of the significant agents in their socialization process, as they oftentimes have more friends online than in real life. They are truly digital citizens. They have grown up in the digital world. They are the YouTube generation. They live in a 24/7 online world where technology is seamlessly integrated in their daily lives. It's not like you live a traditional life and then technology enters at certain points. It's all through their lives. They are aware of technology and automation entering society and exhibit higher levels of tolerance compared to their parents' generation. And what I find interesting is, when I thought about this, what is the tolerance that they are expanding on? There are very interesting discussions about how these generations, this and the next generation, what kind of tolerance they will have for artificial intelligence. Will they view artificial intelligence on the same level as human? For us, it seems outrageous, but this is where the new tolerance comes in. They read a lot less. They don't like text. They are very visually oriented. Their perception is very visually oriented. Instagram and YouTube are very popular platforms for them. Of course, now Snapchat, TikTok, which are very visually based. Facebook is already too much text for them. And what is very interesting is that previous generations feel guilt about spending time online, about using social media. Not this generation. They don't feel any guilt. This is very, very normal. In the Baltics, around 88% of young people of this generation use social media as their primary source of information. So not traditional media, specifically social media, and this is 2021. I believe that the number today is already much higher. YouTube is their top content platform, consuming twice as much video content, maybe even more, as the millennial generation. They are the homeland indoor generation, domesticated and isolated in media-centric homes. I really like this picture. Yes, as I said, they often have more friends online than in real life. They have limited real-life social skills compared to the previous generation. They're shy, they don't really know how to interact. Social situations can be quite frustrating for them, bringing a lot of anxiety. And they also tend to solve problems, social problems online, without involving parents, which is quite dangerous. They are quite sensitive to criticism. Accustomed to living in their online bubbles where there's and you can exclude all kinds of negativity. You can just block it. It is crucial for families and schools to include digital life in everyday conversations, because we sort of view it differently, not as an integral part of a person's entire life. So it's important to regularly inquire about their online experiences. What were the new things they learned, and what they're doing there, what they're exploring there, because it's a very important part of their life. Generation Z, Gen Z, does not digest everything on their own. Everything needs to be quite dummy-proofed. So in comparison to millennials, who sort of were raised with the development of technology, so they understand how technology works, what is the back of it. Gen Z doesn't understand that. They just consume technology, but they're not that savvy in how it actually works. So they just, we would think that they are much better with technology, but they're just quicker and more everything needs to be very intuitive. If it's not intuitive, they don't really know how to handle that well. If they do not achieve results in an instant, they move on quickly. This is not good. If I can't just understand it quickly, it's not good. So the tolerance for bad user design is very, very low. And also they want to know very quickly what will I gain from it? What is the good thing I will get from this? What will the benefit will be? They prefer very simple, intuitive solutions. They do not actually expect major surprises. They make many mistakes because they do not understand the deeper levels of technology. But however, they're very well versed only in the current popular apps, not if you give something very new to them. Oh, sorry. And then the last generation, Generation Alpha, we start the alphabet from the beginning. They used to be called digital babies, digital toddlers, but now they're already like 13 years old, the oldest of them. This is the generation where the use of technology is no longer associated with reading or writing skills. And the turn that created this generation was touchscreens. And this is 2019. I don't even want to know the number today, but 47% of babies, this is up to 2 years old, in Latvia, use internet at least once a day. So smartphone enables that a baby who doesn't know how to talk or read, or even to manage their digestion on their own, they can take the device and they can intuitively know what to press and what to have their cartoon, to have the images they want. Parents lack the competence to raise children in such technological environment and are all often unaware of the risks that it has. Parenting in the digital age is intuitive for parents, as there is no precedent. There really is no way no one can tell you what to do best, because this is a new situation they're in. And the involvement of parents really varies. It's often passive, and technology is often used as a nanny, just to keep the baby occupied. Some of the research shows that 61% of Generation Alpha parents use technology to babysit their children, and parents are often not aware of the risks of their child entering uncontrolled information streams, because that is what's happening. If the baby, if the toddler, if the child uses the internet, it's uncontrolled information stream. You don't really know what they will come upon. Generation Alpha, this is what sociologists expect. This generation will grow up with tablets in their hands, with screens on their hands, unable to live without technology, smartphones. Some predict that they will be capable to transmit thoughts and engage with devices via thought within seconds. Today, 44% of these kids consider a mobile device their favorite toy. However, it's interesting that something like Lego still stays on top of their list. Yes, they will interact with artificial intelligence constantly, play with toys that we don't have yet, work in professions that there aren't yet. Of course, some traditional professions also will remain. Something I advise every new parent to read in the digital age is this European Council guidelines for parents for raising children in the digital age. It's available for free online. It's a very good material for young parents to just sort of understand what is something that they need to think about. Thank you very much. I hope you find this somewhat useful. Do you have any questions? Comments?
It was very, very useful because never had a look like this on also on sorry. It was very, very interesting to me because I've never had an entire look and an entire overview on all the difference between all the generation. I totally agree with you about the last image that you showed us, because to me it's scary to see all these children that are always in front of tablets and computers and so on, instead of running on the grass. And I hope that we'll find also a way to come back from in some ways.
I don't think so. Maybe.
I think that probably in the next 30 years we will have a different kind of artificial intelligence that can be more human probably, and can help us in doing everything. And I hope it would be like this. But thanks to you for your presentation.
Thank you. Okay.